Hi, and welcome to AMA Puget Sound's Coffee Talk series live on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Our guest today is digital marketing consultant Ian Lurie. Hey, Ian.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. How are you?
I'm good. Good.
Good, good. It's a little different. Today we're actually talking about D&D. So today's interview actually came about because of a post I saw that you had a couple of years ago, and you had said that essentially D&D was like marketing. And I'm like, wait, what? Wait, I know marketing. I've done marketing. I've not played D&D specific. I played the vampire one like
Oh,
20
okay.
years
So
ago,
yeah, you,
pre-Twilight. I want to say
yeah,
that was before Twilight.
yeah, yeah. No, you know the setting though.
Exactly. So I started thinking about it like, he's on to something. I don't know what it is, but I want to learn more. And we had invited you to Market Mix, which we didn't do last year. So I'm going to link below. We are doing an interest survey on Market Mix. It's not just for members. We want to expand this to more than just our Pacific Northwest region. So please fill out the link below when I put that down there. But we never got to do your presentation on Market Mix. I've seen it. It looks awesome. And I really wanted to see you present it. But I, tell me more. Tell us more. Where, first of all, D&D, what is that?
So okay, so
So we
Dungeons and
talk about.
Dragons. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons is um, a role-playing game, and I like to call it collaborative storytelling, where one person sets and guides the world in which other people, which are called players, play characters that move through that world. That's probably the best short description I can give you. Uh, Maybe we can run it. Maybe at Market Mix, in between sessions, I can run a quick game for people who have never played Dungeons and Dragons before.
I
Maybe that'd
get
be
out of
the
my
way to do
head.
it.
I've had that in my head, honestly, for two
Yeah,
years. So I'm
yeah,
glad that
yeah.
my telepathy is working today. So
Okay, good,
yeah,
good.
I would love to see that. I think
All
that would
right.
be really fascinating.
It'd be a really good way to do it. It's if you ever want to, for folks who want to see what it's like, there's a podcast called Critical Role that you can take a look at. It's Critical ROLE. I have no association, no affiliation. I'm not marketing for them. I'm just saying it's a good example. Um, it's incredibly nerdy. It's incredibly fun, and it has become sort of reputable in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I feel like I was one of the pioneers who dealt with getting beat up on the playground in the late 70s because Dungeons and Dragons was a demon worshiping thing. That's
Oh
what people
my.
said. Well, no, they called it the Satanic Panic. There was a book that came out called
Yeah.
Mazes and Monsters. Anyway, I digress.
Okay. I thought it was more
Um,
about the rock and roll, the Kiss
yeah,
Army and
no,
Roddy.
no. It was
Yeah.
Dungeons and
Was
Dragons was core. It was core.
I'm so
My
sorry.
aunt, yeah, my aunt bought me my first Dungeons and Dragons set in the late 70s, and my mom didn't speak to her for a week. So gives you a good idea. Even though you're all
That's
heroes, you're all doing heroic things. But
right.
um,
Exactly.
so anyway, it's collaborative storytelling. There is a framework of rules. Dice are used, um, and it's just a lot of fun. You can do it at any level you want. You can sit around a table with all the fancy accoutrement of terrain and little miniatures and stuff, or you can, as we have been for the last year and a half, just get online and talk to each other on cameras and just narrate what's happening.
Absolutely. It's fun. It's really fun when you get into it, and it's really not that hard of an entry point to start playing either. You just need to have some people.
Yeah, yeah.
So so in this, because you said storytelling, where does the marketing part? How does that where's the Venn diagram on that?
So there's some basic principles to Dungeons and Dragons and marketing that overlap. Just as an example, in Dungeons and Dragons, there is this person called the Dungeon Master, and the Dungeon Master, as I said, puts the characters into the story. So if I'm the Dungeon Master, I would say something like, "You're all sitting in a bar," right? That's the classic start for anything like this. You're all sitting in a
Mhm.
bar, and you hear screaming outside. What do you do? And usually the players, the other people, will go outside and see what happens, and then everything unfolds from there. The events unfold from there. Um, in Dungeons and Dragons and in marketing, you can do what's called railroading, where
Okay.
you say you were in the bar and they're screaming outside, and the players say, "Well, we stay inside," and you say, "Well, you can't, you must go outside," and you start doing things to force them to go outside, instead of kind of gently steering them that way. Like you could say, "Well, the screaming gets louder and someone comes flying in the door," right? That's not railroading, that's putting the events in front of them. In
Hmm.
marketing, railroading is, you cannot see, people are gonna get mad at me, but you cannot see our great content without registering and downloading our ebook. There are times when that's appropriate, but there's times when that is just plain railroading, and you're forcing customers to do things that they don't want to do yet. They want to learn something about you. They want to get familiar with the world into which you are about to bring them. Same thing in Dungeons and Dragons, right? If I'm the dungeon master, there's a world into which I'm about to bring people. I can't just plop them in the middle of it and say good luck and then force them to do things. They have to put their toe in the water. They have to get to know me and my style and the world they're moving in. You have to introduce them a step at a time. So railroading is one place. It's a really good example.
Okay.
I can go on for hours, so stop me.
We only have half an hour, so we can break this up maybe. So in your perspective, when it comes to a dungeon master, the person who's leading the entire story, you know, in a marketing campaign, who is that? That's the marketing manager essentially, because they're setting the tone for the campaign.
Yeah. It's whoever the marketer is, or whoever controls the marketing might be a better way to put it, because frequently CEOs insert themselves into the marketing. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so much.
Does that ever happen where you have a player who starts doing that? They're kind of a higher level player and they start to try to horn in on what the dungeon master is trying to do, and how do you deal with that? You know,
it's
in the game and in marketing.
Yeah, I mean, in the example of someone stepping in from outside and taking over the marketing when they shouldn't, that's more like someone walking into the room and saying, and who's not a player, who's not in the game, doesn't know the rules, and says, I think this should happen, even though they don't know what the result of that will be, or how, what the players really want or what the story is. So they just jump in and they base it on their own ego, right? So whatever. And as soon as someone says, I think this should happen, if they're the dungeon master, they have just broken the game. Just like a marketer who says, I think this should happen, is not paying attention to the audience anymore.
Or I think this should go viral.
Right.
Make this,
Right. Yeah. Make this go viral. Exactly. If a member of the audience, whether it's marketing or Dungeons and Dragons, want to take more control, then your job as a marketer is to let them do that. Or as a dungeon master is to let them do that. So that's another similarity, is really observing and adjusting what you're doing. In Dungeons and Dragons, the dungeon master is not the storyteller. The dungeon master is the world builder. The players are the storytellers. So if they decide to go to different places and change things around, I'm gesturing crazily here, and if they decide to go and do things, and move things around, that's entirely up to them. So it's really important. Again, really good overlap between the two.
Sure. And I'm just imagining, when a marketing campaign deploys and the audience takes it and they own it now, they own the narrative of it, good or bad.
That's why hashtag marketing can be very dangerous. Oh, Julie, I just lost you. Gotta love live webcasting.
What's that?
Oh, for a second you froze and I lost audio and I lost everything. Okay.
No, I'm here. I'm here. I promise. We've had some Wi-Fi issues. We had an outage here in Renton the last 2 days, so we just got internet back. Okay. So
right. That just proves this is live. This is legit.
Exactly. Hello. So it's fascinating. Like I was saying, how the audience can then, whether or not they're a customer, whether or not they're playing the game, like you said, they turn the narrative.
Well, and as I was saying right before things kind of froze up there, hashtag marketing is a great example where for a while everybody was like, oh, we're going to take a hashtag and we're going to make the hashtag go viral. What do you do when other people start doing with it what they will, right? Exactly. That's an example where you have to go into it really thinking about, okay, the audience is going to take control. My players are going to take control of this. What am I going to do when it does? Do I want them to? Is that okay?
Right. And how much do you kind of give a parameter to for yourself as the dungeon master or the marketing manager of how far do you let it go before you have to step in and say, okay, I need to protect the story. I need to protect the players. I need to protect the brand. Where do I step in?
And you have to really consider ahead of time too, because a great example is Qantas. A bunch of years ago, they were having some major issues, and I can't remember what they were, but a lot of delayed and canceled flights. So they decided to do a hashtag called Qantas Luxury, and put it out there on Instagram and Twitter and everything else. And everyone could just Google it and see some of the stuff that happened, but people took control of it. And it was hilarious if you're a marketer, not so
Uh-huh.
funny if you're a quantist. That's where all you could do is think of it ahead of time and then learn if it goes
Mhm.
wrong, right? That's all you
Exactly.
can do.
Exactly. I've seen, I can't, off the top of my head, can't think of any, but where they clearly didn't have a funny person in the room, where you look at the hashtag and you're like, that spells something sassy, and they just didn't have, that's why marketers have to be creative people. We have to be little stinkers, because we're going to think of all of the things that customers will take with it.
Yeah, yeah. We spend a lot of our time thinking about the best and worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe why I'm so good at it, because, well, why I think I'm so good at it, because I am a worst case scenario kind of guy. But anyway.
Same here. I've heard that can lead to childhood issues, but we're not going to talk about that now.
No, no, let's not do that.
So how can you, for somebody who might be starting out in marketing, or somebody who's new to marketing, how do you plan for that? Because gosh, there were so many things last year we could not have ever planned for. So what do you do, at least for the easy peasy stuff? How do you plan for, okay, what if my players go rogue? What do I do? And at what point do I step in? How do you plan for that?
Well, the first thing is, don't have too much of a plan. Understand that, a week, a month from now, in marketing terms, things are going to change. Instead have a rough structure of what your goals are, what you'd like to accomplish. Be very self-critical, make sure those goals make sense. And those goals could be, I want to increase sales by X%. I want to get X number of people as leads. I want to get this many people to vote for me, whatever. Okay. Those are goals. Those are logical outcomes of a successful marketing campaign. Then pick the places that you want to lead people. Facebook, Google search, your own website. What are the waypoints, the points of interest that where you want to make sure you're visible? Okay. Then you can start planning. Then you can start planning around, here's how I get people to these different points of interest. Here's how I move them from one to the next. Again, very similar to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
You can do all the story. You can prepare to do as much storytelling as you want. The player characters will go somewhere else. They just will. And when they do, that's why you need those points of interest, that they can go from one to the next, and you have a plan for continuing to move them. That's where the planning comes in. Is, okay, someone comes to Facebook. What are my general guidelines? How am I going to get someone from Facebook to my site? What do I want them to see there? What do I do if they don't come to my site? What's the logical next step? Do I create a really effective self-contained message that they remember me as helpful, even if they don't click right then? Do I start chasing them around with ads? Is there something else I do? Lots of possibilities there. So before you've created the detailed plan, that's it. Then if you want to go and say, in month 1, I'll do this, month 2, I'll do that, that's when you can really think about it.
Gosh, yeah. And so when you're quote unquote planning, for a campaign, we're typically planning, okay, this is going to be a 6-week campaign. There are times where it's a good idea to continue with that campaign. Like, okay, we're going to extend it a little bit. Is that possible in Dungeons and Dragons? And how do you see a correlation with that? Is there a possibility to make the story go longer, or is there usually a set time that the dungeon master has planned, like a marketing manager?
They're both called campaigns, right? In Dungeons and Dragons, the period that you play over, however many nights or weeks or whatever, that the player characters move through whatever the narrative is, and it could be one night, it could be 2 years. I've had campaigns that lasted both. It's just like a marketing campaign. And if you have those points of interest plotted out, and you have the basic details of how folks should find your brand online and what they should do when they do, you can extend or shorten those campaigns as desired. The most important thing is you're looking around the proverbial table, right? Dungeons and Dragons is played in person for a reason. You can see person-to-person interaction. Same thing with marketing. You need really effective measurement of how people are responding.
Right. Essentially, reading the room. And yeah, exactly. Because I'm sure in some campaigns with D&D, like you were just saying, it can turn because the players have an interest in another area, just like a marketing campaign. You might have to, good or bad, you might have to kind of pounce on an opportunity, or get away from, some or negative feedback. So
One night in one game, I had this carefully planned, really scary fight against bad guys, and the players instead ended up getting into a pie eating contest in a town that they passed by. Things happen.
right. Did you ever get to the fight eventually in
Yes,
the
yes. Well, they
okay.
came and found them, right? Again, this is not railroading, but there is things are happening around them. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
eventually the bad guys found them.
Exactly. I mean, I'm thinking because my husband right now he's playing Valhalla, so
Mm.
it's one of those he can you games like that you can either just play through and get to your destination like in a marketing campaign. Get to your. My see you were talking about Kath. There's my dog.
Mm-hmm.
He likes kitties too. So he distracted me like he always does. So
Yeah, yeah.
I forgot what I was saying.
We were
I will.
talking. Yeah, no, that's all right. We were talking about your husband was playing
Oh
Valhalla
yeah,
and playing all the
Valhalla
way through
and
campaigns. And
games like that. It's great because you can either just play through the game
Mhm.
like in a marketing campaign, it's only going to last 6 weeks and we're going to get to that end goal and then we're going to measure everything. Or you can just kind of let it go. And
Mhm.
I think that's really fascinating.
And the tough part with marketing, where the Venn diagram breaks, I think, is with
Mhm.
marketing. You do have to have some kind of structure and plan because you're spending real money. In Dungeons
Yes.
and Dragons, you're spending time, and people are
Yes.
bringing you snacks if you're the dungeon master. Um, but it is a little different. So you do need some structure. The
Mhm.
important thing, I think, is to first budget around those individual points of interest: Facebook,
Okay.
Google. How much are we going to invest in these different things? Then have this separate budget and resources that are going to handle the campaigns, and
Mhm.
set hard prices around campaigns. Just understand, at the same time I'm running these campaigns, there is this ongoing effort to build a world through which all of my customers and prospective customers move. So
Mhm.
you need to that's where the Venn diagram can potentially break, and you have to kind of think about that carefully.
Mhm. So, yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, you can't just willy nilly, we're going to do a campaign. There
Mm-hmm.
has to be an end at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, exactly. So, thinking about your audience, how long are they going to pay attention?
And
You
how do
know?
you and how do you re-engage them later,
Mhm.
right? Because
Exactly.
what you just said is really a really good point. Campaigns begin and end, right? But
Mhm.
you've generated an asset there. You've done something. You
Mhm.
want to build on that. Again, same as
Mhm.
Dungeons and Dragons. You spend weeks building out a world. You're not just going to run one campaign in it.
Exactly. And then there's a whole concept of evergreen content.
Mm-hmm.
That's always interesting,
Yeah,
or even user generated content, which can
yeah.
also be part of the campaign that you weren't planning on.
Well, and in Dungeons and Dragons, if you use the same world, the same setting long enough, then one set of characters do things that become history for the next set of characters if they play at different times. Um, and it's very similar to marketing, right? What you do
Right.
persists, particularly now. So the
Mhm.
things that your customers do, the reviews they write, the way they respond to you in social media, the links they build to you, those become persistent, for better or worse.
Mhm.
And there is that history that starts to unfold.
Right. It almost legendary status. And what
Mm-hmm.
while we were saying this, I kid you not. So my husband and I were watching something on YouTube and we saw an ad come up. And I kid you not, it was the old Cadbury egg bunny audition ad from I swear
Mm-hmm.
when I 30 years ago. It looks I remember it perfectly, but you can tell it's not digital. You can tell it's an old
Right,
analog.
right,
So it's like they're still using this, which
right.
it must be effective.
Well, and when brands become things, right? I'm going to go Google that, right? That's an example of something in the setting, something that just became canon, right? Something that was just sort of a tool that became an
I'm gonna
activity.
I'm gonna
Um,
Xerox that. Give
yeah,
me a
yeah,
Kleenex, please.
yes, yes. And there's also times when individuals do or say something that becomes part of your brand. Like, when I worked at an agency, we had folks who would write really good, friendly stories and reviews of different clients, and we would always go to them and say, "Hey, is it okay if we share this?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, right. So that's something that the player, the customer, did, and you integrate that directly into your campaign.
Oh, that's so cool. I love when that happens.
Marketing's cool. Yeah, yeah,
It really is.
yeah,
It's not just storytelling. There's data. There's it has everything. It's perfect for a person who
yeah,
has interest in so many different things
yeah.
because You can be an SEO specialist for a while. You can be a social media specialist for a
Mhm.
while. You can be a strategic marketer. It's not just hiring your cousin's neighbor's
Dogs,
niece. Yeah.
walkers, veterinarians. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Exactly.
Marketing is world building, not storytelling.
Hmm.
Uh, that's why this Venn diagram, the Dungeons and Dragons overlap, has always stuck in my mind, because you're building out these points of interest, and then you're helping people, you're facilitating movement from one to the next, and then you're adjusting those points of interest accordingly.
Exactly. And you're not curating, but you're building a community too, because
Hmm.
there's marketing Twitter. Hi, marketing Twitter.
Hmm.
There's that community. There's the community within the game of Dungeons and Dragons. When I was earning my marketing degree, I had a class where we were talking about branding and communities, and we were talking about BMW and Harley Davidson. I am from Wisconsin. Harley Davidson is a very big
Hmm.
name in that state.
Hmm.
It's part of life. It's not just a motorcycle. It's life. it's
Yeah.
it's a part of you.
Yeah.
And that's where I think when it can be taken, I don't know, taken too far maybe, but you've got customers for life. And so you need to listen to them is kind of what I'm getting at.
And well, if you want them for life,
Uh,
you have to observe and adjust and facilitate movement from one point of interest to the next, um,
mhm,
and not pressure them.
right.
Don't show me the big pop-up takeover when I first land on your website. That is classic railroading, and you will lose me. That is something I will remember. Let
Exactly.
me decide. So
Exactly.
those are examples.
Hmm. So you've talked many times about points of entry. What are some good points of entry, whether it's a marketing campaign or in a game?
My favorite points of interest in gaming in Dungeons and Dragons are, well, the bar. It's a classic. Um, uh, Towns and communities. Any kind of epic place. So it could be the Wizard's Tower, or it could be the floating city.
Oh yeah.
It could be a ship that you find your way to. Um, and usually they're connected by events, like something happens outside the bar, or something happens that requires that you go to the floating city, or the floating city is an option along with the Wizard's Tower and the bar, and those are all places you can go. In marketing, points of interest are, you know, various social media outlets, Twitter, Clubhouse, if anyone can figure out how to actually make that do anything important. Um, Sorry, LinkedIn, Facebook,
Hmm.
whatever, Snapchat, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Even
Slack.
TikTok, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, Slack. And then there's email, which is still a legitimate point
Right.
of interest, right?
Mhm.
SEO, and you don't ever do just one. You want to tie them together, and that's the most
Mhm.
important thing, because you may find points of interest that I'm not. It could be a sandwich board. It
Right,
could be
exactly.
a billboard. It could be anything.
Right.
Um,
Because
it's just
it's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's any place people first encounter your
Yeah.
brand or your story, or your narrative. They enter your narrative. In marketing, my favorites, certainly the ones we all talk about the most, are social media, organic search, paid media, paid, earned, and owned media, right?
Yeah.
So social, paid and organic social, paid and organic search, email. The things I
Mm.
see people forgetting are some of the more word of mouth. I hate that term, but some of the places where people can sort of amplify for you, and
Mhm.
it'll happen spontaneously, and you may not have control over it. And a lot of
Right.
marketers go, I'm not sure I want to do that. You may not have a choice, so you have to assume that those are points of interest.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I like personally social email
Hmm.
um events. I think those are a
Hmm.
great opportunity. If you do it
Yeah.
right, not just collecting emails. No, no,
Yeah.
no. It
Yeah.
has to be more meaningful. I
Hmm.
had one role where it was direct relationship marketing, where I visited insurance agents
Hmm.
directly and just dropped off pens and
Hmm.
paper. That was very effective,
Hmm.
very effective. But
Yeah.
it
I
was
mean,
supported.
Yeah, I mean, your own website is a point of interest. Notice I'm not saying content, because content is the thing you deliver on all these points of interest and you
Right.
surface on all these points of interest. But your own website's a pretty important point of interest, particularly if you're doing in-person event-based marketing, because you do want to have, again, they have to have some place to go after that. You have to be facilitating, not railroading. So they may call you, they may go to your website, they may email you. You have to give them some options.
Exactly. Exactly. So you've mentioned this a few times, but the railroading, especially with a paywall, you've said that there are times where it is necessary, like you referencing when you have to bring an event to the players because they ended up having a pie contest instead of fighting
Mm-hmm.
the monster. So,
Mm-hmm.
where's that necessary? Where not necessary, but where do you see that okay in marketing?
Um, First of all, if you've invested, well, no, that's not even true. I was about to say if you've invested a lot in an asset, but that's actually when I would say don't paywall it because you want everyone to see it.
Right.
The times I like to use paywalls at the bottom of the funnel, as people call it. So, or any form of railroading, registration, paywall, whatever. Um, I want to collect information from people when they are ready to speak directly with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I'm going to make a much harder sell of, all right, you could just click my email address and send me a note, and that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
here's a more structured way to reach me.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
may be case studies that are confidential and you can't share them openly. You
Mm-hmm.
may have software demos, right? So there's all sorts of times when you do want to railroad a little bit,
Right.
because just it could get out of control,
Mm-hmm.
not just for you but for the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere you think you can lend a lot to the discussion and you think that your audience might actually lose and miss something, right? They might not have as good an experience, but you got to be really honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
Really honest.
Exactly.
um,
Showing that value, you really have to
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Yeah, you can't. I
So
like what you're saying about kind of doing this at the end of the funnel because you've already gotten their buy-in, you've already gotten their interest. So short story. Before we've got a few more minutes. I worked at Claire's many, many, many years ago in the ear piercing place in the
mm,
mall, and at the
yeah.
time, the practice was you walk in, you're greeted, and you're handed a basket for easy shopping. Uh, and I didn't always feel comfortable with that. That was just the rule. You had to do it no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell, you can, again, read the room. You can tell when somebody does not want to be approached. Part of your job is to do that. So,
Yeah.
one time I was working with the district manager, and I think I was probably 18, 19 at the time, a little smart ass, of course. And a woman came in, an older woman, and said, and just I said hi. I walked over to her, gave her the specials, like here scrunchies are on sale. Here's a basket, and she said, "No, I don't. No, thank you." And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay." I was respectful. I walked away. Small store. It's a very small store if you've ever been
Yeah,
in one.
yeah.
District manager comes in or sees the entire thing happen and says, "Did you greet the customer?" Like, how did you miss what I just did? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Yes, I had greeted the customer, offered her a basket. She didn't want it." And she's like, "Well, she has to have a basket." And I said, "She doesn't want one. When she's ready, she will." This woman is like twice my age, by the way. And she had been a district manager for like 10 years, not her first day. And so she gives me a dirty look, walks over to the woman, says, "Hi, welcome. Here's a basket." And the woman said, "I just told the other girl I don't want a basket." The woman left.
Of course
She
she
didn't buy
did.
anything.
Yeah, yeah. And
And again, read the room.
that's where you have to be brutally honest with yourself as the marketer. Is the basket going to really provide, do they have to have the basket to
Mm-hmm.
learn what they're going to learn? Do they have to talk to you, um, to download that case study? I mean, is it
Right.
really essential that you call them right after they download the white paper? I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think so. So why don't you just let them read the white paper and go on
Exactly.
from there? Yeah.
Exactly. Many times, if I would get that response, if the DM wasn't there, like, "Okay, I'll let you shop on your own. Let me know when you're ready." They would end up leaving. They would need two baskets
Hmm. Hmm.
because they were left alone. They were respected.
And railroading, as this is what we're describing here, leads to crappy responses. In marketing, that's when you get the ASDF, JKL, semicolon, I had to look at my keyboard, leads that come in the door. And in gaming, your entire group, all the players
Yeah.
disengage. And
Yeah.
it just stops being fun for everybody.
Right. And
So, yeah.
it comes to, quality over quantity. Well, we have to get as many names as we possibly can, but why? You can have as many names as you want if only two or three are going to buy.
You have to get as many responses as
Mhm.
possible. And the difference between a name and a response is that a response is an actual request to
Yep.
engage. It is not
Yep.
yeah, okay. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
it's not all right, I'll take the stupid basket. A
Yeah.
response is thanks, and then they put stuff in the basket. That's a
Hmm.
response.
Exactly. Exactly. We're kind of wrapping up, but I wanted to kind of leave the last couple of minutes for you if there's anything that we didn't cover that you feel that our audience should know D&D marketing overlap?
Um, just, I mean, it's, I'm bringing in this abstract, nerdy game that most people don't know about. Just understand that as marketers, we are creating the setting, but our customers live in it. And we have to have the flexibility to watch what they're doing and adjust accordingly. And I know that everybody says this, but, look out for railroading. Look out for opportunities to improve the experience and create new points of interest. And just be aware that your plans will probably change within 3 hours of you launching your marketing campaign. Just like in Dungeons and Dragons, your plans will change. So.
Exactly. One more quick question. How do you feel about a 5-year plan in marketing?
Sure. Okay, great. If I'm the CMO, my average tenure is 18 months. So
Right.
Create it if you want. There's no way that's going to last.
Right. Exactly. I was
Yeah.
laughing at that 5 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'll stop there.
Exactly. Let it happen organically,
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you, Ian. I've been wanting to talk to you for so long. This is the first time we've actually ever met. We were talking about that before, but we've been, I guess, Twitter pals for several years.
Yeah.
And hopefully after all of this, when we are in person again, we can finally meet and I can buy you coffee.
Yes. Sounds great.
Perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Julie, so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching. And if you really liked today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and we will be back in a couple weeks. Thank you so much.